Welcome to Blood Brothers Podcast, where we talk crime and writing with well-known and well-loved authors from around the globe.
What the
Today,
hell are you for them?
What?
Well-known and well-loved. Why have you got me on?
I was talking about Chris and Rob. Also, today,
Sorry.
Joining me are regular voices Chris McDonald and Rob Parker.
Hello.
Hello.
And in our guest seat today, we have the well-loved Neil Broadfoot, author of No Man's Land, No Place to Die, and the forthcoming The Point of No Return. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Neil has already warned us that he's slightly hungover after birthday celebrations, so we're going to punish him for this one.
You're going to be gentle to me.
Oh, no, we just said that to get you on.
Ah, right, okay, well, I'm here now. Okay, do your work.
The boys have got questions.
Just remember, I work with Douglas Skelton, so my tolerance for pain is fairly high as it is.
Fair enough. We can't even begin to compare.
Honestly, you have no idea.
I've having known you for a little bit, Neil, it's only now in this context that I realise what a fabulous voice you have. And I'm talking from, like, the voices on this podcast I feel intimidated by all the time. It's like being in an echo chamber of greatness for me today with you three.
Wow.
Seriously.
I have been told I've got a face for radio, so that's fine.
We can confirm.
Yeah, the amount of photoshopping that went into my author photograph, you have no idea.
Oh, God.
The problem I've got reading your Fraser books, though, Neil, is that I cannot separate you from him.
I'll take that as a compliment.
So I see you as Connor Fraser all the time, and I can't help it.
I'll take that. I mean, he spends a lot more time in the gym than I do. He's better than I do, especially at the moment. But yeah, I'll do that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll use that for the slug for the next book. Neil Broadfoot, he really is Connor Fraser.
Yeah, I think that works.
Oh, if only that was.
Do you find that, though, guys? I mean, do you find that when you read other people's work that you can't separate the author once you've met them from the characters they write?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I've read your work. There's not some giggling buffoon sitting in the corner.
And that is probably the biggest compliments I've ever received.
Yeah, there you go. I've been practicing that one for weeks, Rob.
And you were waiting for an in, like the right moment.
That's on my crib sheet of things that need to be said.
No, a reader said to me that they thought Ben Bracken, whenever they imagined Ben Bracken, they pictured a direct cross between me and Timothy Dalton.
Jesus Christ.
If I do say so myself.
You're going to have words with Mike Craven in that case.
Oh, I know. Oh, I've already had a word with him. I'm not impressed with this anti-Dalton stuff. I'm really.
Yeah, no, he's gone out quite public on that. It's like it's a hill he's willing to die on, I think.
Yeah.
We've had serious conversations about Bond, both on this podcast and in Noir at the Bar. Conversations. There's been a lot of Bond chatter.
I think there's going to be a bit of giggling on this today as well, because I'm already feeling a burn in my cheeks. These not insubstantial cheeks.
Are you a little giddy?
I am a little bit giddy, yeah.
Are you giddy because Neil said nice things about your book?
I need no invitation to be giddy, but that will certainly increase the giddiness. And the fact I think I've mainlined this pint of Guinness in a couple of minutes. It's gone north very quickly.
I heard. I mean, we can check back on the timeline, but I think I heard you crack that at 3 minutes, and we're 5 minutes down, and the bugger's gone. It's not a competition, Rob. You've got family quiz after this.
Oh, I know. It gets more raucous every week as well. Anyway.
Well, the simple thing is, guys, just don't stop drinking.
Yeah, that's my philosophy, and it's worked for me for 46 years. Neil, do you want to give us a little blurb about your forthcoming Point of No Return?
Yeah, the Point of No Return is the third in the Connor Fraser series. And this time, a man who was convicted of murder nearly 15 years ago, some pretty brutal murders of students at Stirling University, is released after they find that his trial was unsafe. So he's released, and it's no sooner is he released, and he goes back to Stirling, or a village just outside Stirling where he lives with his dad. The bodies start piling up in exactly the same manner as they did 15 years ago. Now, the problem is that Connor has been hired to do private security for this guy because obviously he doesn't trust the police. So Connor effectively has given him an alibi. So he has to try and figure out, is this guy the actual killer? If so, how did he do it? Or is there someone else out there? Mm-hmm. And then amongst all that, he's digging into something that he's found about his own past and his own family, which makes for somewhat uncomfortable reading for Connor.
Oh, yeah.
And that's coming out September.
I think it's September the 6th. It's either this or the 9th. But it's coming out. And in September's going to be a busy month because the Connor Fraser books are coming out in audiobook in September for the first time.
Ooh, very absolutely.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does with them. And it'll be nice to have someone else reading that first line from the second book without me having to worry about it.
The amount of Twitter furore about that.
Yeah. So shall we broach that? That was one of Sharon's questions.
Mm-hmm.
She said that, not just the first line, actually, the first chapter.
Mm-hmm.
Where the hell did that come from? And is it broadcastable?
If I knew, I'd tell her. Honestly, I was writing, I don't know if this happens to you guys, but I was writing another book, which was meant to be Connor 2. And I was 10,000 words in, chugging away, quite happy. And I was out a walk, and out of nowhere, that first line just dropped into my head. Just out of nothing,
first line.
That was it, bang. And then I thought, right, okay. And I put it aside. You know what it's like? You get ideas, you get lines, and you put them aside. But this kept on tapping me on the shoulder, saying, come here. We need to talk about this. So I had to eventually put what I was working on aside, pick that up and run with it and see where it went. And then I inadvertently did the one thing I said I'd never do and wrote a kind of almost sex scene, which, God loves Stephen King, who I grew up reading, but he can't write a sex scene for crap. And that was the point that when I was growing up, I thought, right, I'm never reading the sex scene. It'll always be in the door slammed shut, and that was it. And then the next morning, but no, of course, this line came in my head, so I had to follow it and see what happened.
Can we actually say the line? Can we do that?
Well, you can say the line. You're more than welcome to say the line.
No, I wasn't volunteering myself. I know Sharon's already volunteered me to say it. And Chris as well. Thanks, Chris.
I think it was Vic, actually. I think it was Vic Watson. And then I just...
yeah.
Well, he's got it right there. Because I have it queued up here, ready.
He's dying to do it.
Honestly, this is great. Her expression was hard. The sex was harder. That is a one hell of a line. That, even though it's full of Rudy Doody stuff, that is a hell of a line.
Rudy Doody.
I have no idea. Can I have that for the cover? I really do an adventure.
even if the opening chapter is Rudy Doody.
If you like your books, Rudy Doody, you will love this book.
Yes. You can imagine what problems I have when we discussed, like last week, we discussed dinosaur erotica. I mean, that stuff really is Rudy Doody.
And you've disappointed readers and fans in your obsession with dinosaur erotica. I saw Steve Gold's created some fan fiction for you today.
He did, yeah. I found it, I'd love to say I found it deeply arousing, but I can't say.
I found it strangely arousing. I think it was the Velociraptor.
Because it was Steve, it was extremely well written.
He left out a word. I didn't want to edit him on Twitter.
Yeah. I couldn't help but admire the craft.
I was illustrating it in my mind as we went on. So anyway, we digressed.
A follow-up
Twitter
question then, shall I? So you said that you were writing something different and this line kind of leapt in and it sort of took you. So Lorna said, when you start to write a book, do you have everything plotted out in advance or do you just allow the characters to go along?
I never plot a thing. All I ever have is an idea, a scene, a line, and then I just run with it. Because if I plot something, it kills it for me. But if I'm just making it up as I go along, I'm as excited as the reader to find out what the hell happens next. And that drags me back to the computer first and foremost to get the work done.
Oh, nice.
The other thing is, hopefully, that what the hell's going on, and that impetus and that speed goes into the narrative, and the reader gets a faster, more satisfying read because of it. Because I'm, figuring things out as I go, and it feels more organic than sitting down and plotting things. I had an idea for a standalone, and my agent said, right, okay, I want a full treatment of it, not just because normally what I do is I'll do a rough synopsis of a couple of paragraphs, like the blurb you get on the back of a book. I'll give it to my editor. They say, yeah, that's great, let's go. And then about 2 weeks later, I'll go back to them and say, that synopsis you got, it's changed. Book's different. Sorry. But because this was a kind of high concept thing, Al said, I want a full, worked out scene by scene breakdown of this standalone. And it was the hardest thing I've ever had to do.
Really?
Oh,
who's your agent, Neil? Sorry, if you don't mind me asking.
No, by all means. Al Guthrie at the North Agency.
Cool.
I just moved to Al recently on the recommendation of Ed James. But yeah, Al came back and said, listen, do this full breakdown so that we can maybe sell a partial. So I did it. And as I say, I can get myself to 70,000 words in a book, have no clue where it's going, and then fix it. But writing I think it was 9 pages treatment that breaks everything down scene by scene just about broke me. It was horrifically done. It's
a really dry way of doing. I mean, I quite like plotting, especially for more complicated things, but I tend to do it as a sort of bullet point headline. So, the big death scene part 1, big death scene part 2, finding out about the killer, so they're just like a strap on each one, and then you go, okay, right, I kind of know the vague frame of where I'm heading to. And as soon as you then start fleshing it out into paragraphs, you're like, oof, this is dry.
So from doing what you did with that 9-page thing, do you think it'll change much, or is that kind of set in stone and you know where you're going now?
I have no doubt that it will change completely because I'll get bored. Because if I know what the story is, it's the old thing of when you get stuck, okay, have somebody kick the door down with a gun. So because I know what's happening, I'll be bored with it, so I'll have to go and do something else. So, it's, I don't know, it's just, it's funny because as a journalist, sorry, we've got a special studio guest.
It's all right. Who's this one? Hello.
This is Alex. Alex.
Hi, Alex.
Yeah, it's okay.
How are you? It's okay.
You getting shy?
It's okay.
Sorry about that, boys. That's just
No worries.
That's just to show my bona fides that I'm not a complete psychopath. I'm a man as well. Actually, that happened a couple of years ago. We were up in, it was Granton-on-Spey, sorry to digress, but we were up in Granton-on-Spey and we were talking about Falling Fast and how I'd written about the woman coming off the top of the Scott Monument, and it was pretty visceral, gritty stuff. And this woman at the front of the audience said, you seem so normal, but this stuff that you write is really, have you got worries about this? And just at that moment, Alex did exactly what she'd just done, burst in, ran up to me, Daddy, give me a big hug on the stage.
Oh, bless her.
I'm
glad I wasn't talking about that, reading that line when that big little pocket came in. Yeah.
I would check, because she knew that I was doing this interview, so she wanted to check what I was doing. Sorry, to get back to your question, I will change that. No doubt in my mind, that will change completely. I'll have the rough spine of the story, but when I'm writing it, I know it's typical Magpie Mind thing. Something fun will happen, and it'll be a flashy idea over there, and I'll have to go and explore it.
Yeah.
I love the idea of a magpie mind. You just kind of go, ooh, shiny. Ooh.
Yeah, that's so cool, that. Yeah.
That's what you do, though. You write along, at least I find that it's almost like you're being in a car and you're watching the scenery and you go, oh, I'm going to go that way. That looks fun. And you just take it where it goes. And you, luckily enough, touch wood, I've always managed to tie it all up in the end.
That sounds so cool, though. The idea that, and it sounds like you write from a perspective of pure joy and wonderment all the time, Neil. That you're enjoying what you're doing so much that it's just, because this is what I love about it, sitting down with a blank piece of paper. And where are we going to go? What are we going to do? You can do whatever you want. You're the master of your own destiny and your character's destinies, and how exciting that is.
I mean, it's always fun, and I always say that, writing's a job that doesn't feel like work. But at the end of the day, it is a job, and you have to treat it like that. And it's not every day. Don't get me wrong, I love writing. I love doing what I'm doing. I love seeing my book in bookshops when they were open and we could see such things. It's a job at the end of the day, and you've got to treat it as such. And there's not every day that you're going to enjoy it. But if I was plotting everything out and I knew what I was going to do before I sat down and did it, I'd never do it because it would bore the hell out of me.
And so on that job front, are you disciplined in writing every day, weekdays, and taking weekends for family time and knocking stuff down, or do you write when the mood hits you?
I'm one of these guys who, because I worked so long in newspapers, and I should probably preface this with the book's done, I've not got to deliver the next one till next March, so I've got plenty of time. So if my publisher's listening, they don't have to panic yet. Because I worked for 15 years in newspapers, and deadlines were a daily part of my existence. So the good thing about that was I'm not one of these writers who sits and I shall wait for the muse to inspire me and then I'll go. I know if I've got to do 2,000 words, I've got to do 2,000 words, and I will sit down and I will do that. I am the world's worst procrastinator. You can always tell when a book's about to start because the house never looks tidier, the cars are always clean, the dogs are looking at me saying, we don't want to go out for another bloody walk, just leave it alone. But I will procrastinate like hell before I start, because there's part of that fear of, here we go again, I've got to pump 100,000 words out here. Am I going to be able to do it? But yeah, I'm disciplined enough that because of the newspapers, and because if I've got a deadline, and I will leave it too late at times and then have to pummel out thousands of words a day, but I'll find that normally 2,000 words is the benchmark. But when you're getting towards the end of a book, that rises exponentially.
Yeah, it gets faster. I managed to pull out 5,000 words on one day towards the end of something, just because the scene was those final scenes were so pacey, and I was so excited. And you suddenly go, "Oh God, it's like midnight, and I've been writing all day."
But it was that with No Place to Die, that it just didn't want me to. When I got to the last of it, I wrote the last 10,000 words in one day.
Whoa!
Because I thought I'd finished. I'd get 2,000 words, go right, okay, and I'd go away and do something, and the book would whisper to me, "Come on back, we're not finished yet." So the whole thing, the last 10,000 words, just went out in one whack.
So,
yeah, perfect.
Like a mad purge of all the good stuff.
Kept on coming, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Because I when I'm doing the books, like I budget days and time and amount of words that I can amount of half decent words I can conceivably get done in a day.
Yeah.
But and then you're right, at the end it all just goes haywire when more words are coming from nowhere and bits you need to tie up come up from nowhere else, and it's just I just love it. I get so excited about finishing a book. It's the most exciting bit.
That's when I get my scribbly side pad on as well. It's like, oh fuck, go back and change.
yeah.
Side pad.
Buzzing about the craft, though. It's so exciting.
The problem is that when you finish a book, you're not finished a book.
No, because
you won't finish it, and then you'll go right. You'll get it to the point where you've your family's seen it, your beta readers have seen it, and they've said it's okay. So then you send it to your editor, and then Dean Rankin says there's this little kind of time bomb sitting in your email, and you take a little time away from it, because up until you open that, it's like Schrodinger's email. The book could go great and shit at the same time, and until you click that email, you've written the perfect book. And then your editor comes back and says, "Nah, change that."
You get the editorial shit sandwich of, "Wow, this is a really good draft."
Many strong points here, however. Yeah.
One line of good. Shit. Please see additional notes. Second line of good.
There's nothing more terrifying than when you open up, when you get the proofs back after you've done the structural edit, and then you open it up, and it's just this sea of red.
Yeah, it's lovely.
The edit's on. And some of it might just be, you've got a double space there, you're closing a double space. But all you see, and it's like that scene in The Shining where, the elevator's open and the blood comes screaming out at you. You see it and you think, oh no, I've got to do this again.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
I've got now to a point where I've convinced myself that that's the best part about it all. And just slightly to digress to, we talked about this as well, like you never really leave a book alone, do you? About the idea that, like, I can't read any of my books again because there's stuff I'd do differently. And it's only natural to want to do that because you develop, don't you, as a writer. But I had an email in my email box this week saying, hi, just read A Wanted Man, which is my debut. So we're 6 books down the line now. Just wanted to let you know I found 28 errors in there, typos and continuity, and wondered if you'd like me to point them out to you. I'm like, no, I don't want to know this. Don't do that.
I've just been looking at a picture of your face, and I found 57 errors. Would you like me to sit down and point them all out to you? No.
It would drive you insane to go back and look at all that and know that it'd be published. It'd be just,
Have you had previous contact with that person?
Never.
So just like completely out of the blue?
No, just like slid right into the DMs with, here I am, I'd like to ruin your life, please.
When I worked for the Scottish Government in a department that shall remain nameless, there was a guy who, it was just when I was starting out and I was writing the Doug and Susie books, and every time I had one out, I didn't make a big deal of it in work, a book came out, but he'd found me on Amazon and he'd found that I was a writer and he liked crime fiction, so he'd read them. And All the Devils came out, and he insisted on, I've done a quick review, Neil. Shall we take 10 minutes and have a coffee and sit down?
Oh, it's already out.
Well, I thought this was good, and I thought this was good. Have you thought of it? There was a swimming pool in that Scottish Government building. That may explain the fact why I've got a scene in my head where basically it's a locked room mystery, and if I said there was blood on the walls, and the pool had turned the colour of diluted Ribena. And I'm not saying that came to me whole and complete in that moment when I'm sitting across from this lovely gentleman who's giving me a line-by-line critique of my work. Yes, well.
With credentials that he obviously presented beforehand about his reviewing etiquette and skill set.
He was a nuclear physicist who had become a civil servant.
Well, it's not rocket science, is it?
I almost went nuclear that day. That's all I'm going to say.
The pool has never looked the same.
It did come in very handy, though, because there was one meeting where another person was being an absolute idiot, to which it was just slowing the meeting down, to which I said, listen, you've read my books, you know what I'm capable of thinking. Do you really want to have this argument with me?
This is what I like to think Chris McDonald does at parents' evenings these days. He's a primary teacher, but he also murders people for a living. So there's this sort of duality to his existence where he just has to look at them and go, well, she's done very well this term, but there is room for improvement.
You call this an end-of-year present?
No, I think this is a miniature version. No, you want little Josie to come back next year, don't you?
Could I, while we were talking about going back in time there, Neil, could I ask you about your debut? Falling Fast. I was at the dinner at 2014's Bloody Scotland. When because we're going back 8 years now. Your debut at the time, and it was shortlisted for the Book of the Year, wasn't it? Alongside, and Peter May won it, didn't he?
Yeah, that was the year
Peter won it for Entry Island.
Yeah, that's right, because Craig Russell won it the year after. Sorry, I'm getting my timeline confused.
No, because I find it amazing. When you make contact with people in a different time of life. So were you there at that night as well?
I was there. I was there for both. The one year that I missed, no, I was there for the dinner and then I left, and I can't remember if it was that. It wasn't the year that I was nominated. I think it was the year after. I was working at the government and Alex Salmond resigned after the independence referendum.
Right.
There, I went in, did the dinner, and then I left again.
Right.
Yeah, I've been at Bloody Scotland every year since 2014.
Right, because I just like that kind of reception to your debut. I mean, I remember the buzz around Falling Fast being so huge and heavy. And how that must have been as a debut author. That your first foray into the marketplace, and that was the response.
It was, yeah. I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I got into writing because I've always been a writer. I've always wanted to write. This is all I've ever wanted to do. But the first book came out with a small publisher. I got to do what I wanted to do, which was dedicate my first published book to my gran. And I didn't think it would make much of a hit. And then suddenly it was, well, you've been nominated for the Dundee International Book Prize. Okay. And then I always remember the phone call from my agent, because it was, my publisher. It was the Deanston Award at Bloody Scotland at that time, sponsored by Deanston Whisky.
Yep.
So she phoned me, and I remember clearly I was putting the bins out, and she phoned me, and I stopped in the front garden. She said, "I've got one word for you, Deanston." And I just said, "Yeah, very nice whiskey. You sending me a bottle for being published?" And I didn't click. And then she said, no, hold on. You've been nominated for the Deanston Award alongside. And then she reeled off Peter May, Chris Brookmeyer.
Yeah.
And I couldn't quite take it in that had happened. Because these are the people that, I was a fan of, and suddenly I was among them, and people were saying nice things about my book.
Yeah, I mean, I have to be honest. Of the shortlisted books, yours was the one I bought at the time. But then Peter May went round all the tables giving out free hardbacks. do you remember? And I was like, "This is different gravy. This, he could just give it away." But no, it was great. And the whiskey, you're absolutely right. They put a bottle of the whiskey on each table as well, didn't they? And I remember drinking that with Alex Sokoloff. She was lovely. Well, she still is lovely, obviously, but she was,
Whiskey didn't finish her off then.
No, but she was just, to an unpublished wannabe author at the time, she was just dead kind. So it was really nice.
That's one of the nicest things that I found was, when the nomination came out, it kind of supercharged everything, and things got a bit lost because everything went suddenly so fast that, you've got to go and do this photo call, and hello, Mr. Brookmeyer. And, how you doing, Neil? One of the nicest things was how welcoming and inclusive everybody was. It wasn't a case of, who's this young... They might have said that behind my back. Who's this young who dares to come in and, But everybody was, to a crime writer since I've been published, they've been great.
But I guess it's because everybody has been in the same position. So everybody's been a debut author. And of course, not everybody's got their nominations for everything on their debut, but the point is you kind of see somebody coming in and you don't go, well, fuck you, you're stealing my audience, because people read much quicker than we can all write books. So you gotta, I think everybody is, and in the book world anyway, and especially in the crime world, everybody seems incredibly supportive and friendly of new writers and old and new books coming out, and everybody.
Yeah,
it's a lovely place to exist in, the crime writing world. It really, really is. And I can
get all our aggression out on the page.
Yeah, most likely.
To prove that we're ordinary, loving people.
By each other.
It's because that was when I first started writing. That was my wife got me a weekend pass to bloody Scotland. That was like my birthday present that year.
All right.
And it was it was so cool, So I met Ragnar Jonasson before he was translated into English and blew up massively, and it was really lovely. And as you say, I went there terrified, absolutely terrified, and came away with friends for life. Out of authors, it was just amazing.
I hadn't
done anything at that point.
Bloody Scotland's a special one, though. There's something about that festival. I don't know whether it's the location, because Stirling being so compressed the way it is. I mean, I suppose Harrogate's the same way, but there's something, and full credit to Gordon and Craig and Bob and Laura and everybody who's put Bloody Scotland together. But there's something very special about the atmosphere of Bloody Scotland. Yeah, which I think is why it's such a big miss. All the festivals are a big miss this year, but Bloody Scotland particularly. I mean, obviously I owe a lot to Bloody Scotland with the nominations and stuff. But there's something really special about that festival.
Not many festivals can inspire a torchlit parade.
No. They've been going less than 10 years. And they effectively, for that weekend, back in the days when it was normal, you could take over. Stirling was basically Bloody Scotland for that weekend. And how many festivals, as you say, can, in the space of 8 years, go from being a small startup to let's have a torchlit procession all the way down Stirling and basically take over a town for a weekend.
I don't know how. No idea.
And a football match. That was one of the main reasons why I wanted to finish my book, so I could play in that football match. And I picked this year.
That's the football match that inspired Connor Fraser.
Did it?
It was, because they play it up at Cowan's Hospital and the bowling green at the side of it. And I was watching the match, and me being me, somebody kicked the ball and I heard the thump of the ball getting kicked. And I thought, this would be a great place to dump a body. And looked around and I thought, hold on, even better, this would be a place to decapitate a body. And I saw the end.
You on this side.
Kind of when, I don't know whether it was because Scotland were playing rubbish or whatever at that point, but I just thought, you could decapitate a body here. You could mount the head on us. Okay, right, there's something in that. And I went for a walk around Stirling, and it was like, the visor had been lifted, and suddenly I was seeing the place for the first time. And it hit me, nobody's written a big series set in Stirling.
Yeah.
Right, okay. And then in one of those lucky flukes, my now publisher wanted to meet me that night for a drink. She sat me down and said, listen, I love your work, but I can't take you mid-season with the Doug and Susie books in Edinburgh. Have you got anything else? At which point I started laughing manically and said, well, I've got this idea about this guy who finds a dead body and, and to her credit, she didn't run away screaming. And about a month later, the contract came in and Connor Fraser was born.
That's amazing.
Man.
That is amazing. On the topic of the football match, I have there is something that when, like you say, when the world gets back to normal, I've got a few people I need to apologise to. I got the call last summer by, and it was probably the proudest moment of my life because I'd realised that my ship had sailed playing for England. Really, in traditional football sense, and then I got the call from Luca and Howard. Would you come and be part of the squad at Bloody Scotland? And I was absolutely delighted. And I went for a routine doctor's trip 2 days before, and they kept me in, and I ended up in hospital for 5 days, and I had surgery. Yeah, and it's all absolutely fine now, but. The first thing I said when I came round on that Wednesday was, can I still play football on Saturday? And they were like, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. So I went, no, I can definitely play. And I grabbed my phone and I sent voicemails to Luca. And it was a total shambles. And I spoke to him. He was trying to have tea with his kids. And I was like, man, they've told me I can't play. And it's a disgrace. Peace and love. Peace and love. And I did that to Rob Scragg and Mick Brown as well. And so I owe them beers when I see them.
Well, when this is over, the amount of drinking and football playing that's going to get done is going to be one for the ages. As we were saying the other night, you're not going to be allowed into the first party until you've identified your organ donor beforehand.
I think there are a few organs of mine that people won't want. Won't want them.
Yeah, no, we're not looking at any of the attendees as organ donors. We need innocent, fresh blood as the donor.
Oh, right. So
there's no point having one of your battered old kidneys.
All right, I'll take it.
You've been pickling those things for weeks now. There's no point having them.
Well, actually, this is really interesting. We're recording today, the day before Waterstone starts opening again tomorrow. And this is, so we're recording on Sunday let me just have a look, Sunday the 14th, 15th is tomorrow. Our first episode of Blood Brothers was the day that everything shut.
Yeah.
So, nice little bit of...
13 weeks ago.
13 weeks. Symmetry.
You know. No. Look at us now.
That's interesting. How have you been through lockdown, Neil?
Okay, because, I mean, as you've seen... having a young family and 3 dogs, it was tough when you're only allowed out once a day with 3 collies and 1 6-year-old. That was not fun. Work-wise, I've been very lucky in that I managed to sneak the point of no return in before lockdown started. So I wasn't actually writing a book when this all kicked off. I was editing a book.
Yeah.
As I said to you before, I'm not sure how I'm going to reference this in the next Connor, because the Connors appear in real time.
Yeah.
So the next book's going to come out a year from now. What's the world going to look like a year from now? Connor's a schools protection specialist. In the last book, I was writing about him going to pubs. I was writing about him going to hotels, public spaces, meeting people. And even when I was editing, I was thinking, this feels like a different world. So my difficulty is, how am I going to reference all this now in the next Connor book? So writing things, the thought of actually writing something's been difficult because I just don't know how to grapple with the new reality we're dealing with. But with lockdown itself, because I've been editing, I've been very lucky that I've been able to just focus on that rather than create something new. So it's been okay. being a writer, it hasn't really changed that much. The computer's still there, the laptop's still there, the work's still there to be done.
Yeah, and I guess, we were all sitting in the position where we're perfectly accustomed to working at home and fielding around distractions of family and dogs and whatever. And, that serious upset to your working life isn't the same as many office-based workers, team workers have experienced. But, there's something weird about the creativity side for me that I think, if you're editing, you go, okay, good, but I don't envy anyone having to have created something.
Well, it's hit me subconsciously, which I didn't realise. So I've just done I've just checked it over again. A 25-page action sequence on the Everglades with airboats and all sorts, and everyone keeps 2 meter social distancing rule all the way through. And I never planned it; it just happened. No one touched each other.
Are they jousting on the Everglades?
No one goes near each other, and even to the point that they're on a boat and there's a standoff at one stage, and I can see I've just measured out 2 meters in my head there, haven't I? And that's how they're confronting each other. So it didn't mean it at all, but it's amazing how just after 12 weeks, it's totally corrupted my mind as to what is normal.
Well, I think part of it is, there's that horrible phrase that we're hearing all the time of the new normal.
Oh, God.
Because this has been shock and awe that you can't switch the TV on without coronavirus, the update. You can't go onto Twitter without somebody doing something. You can't go onto Facebook without somebody saying they know somebody that's got it, or they're worried, or they've been to the shop and people aren't social distancing and stuff. So it is blanket coverage of it. You cannot escape it. And even the little things like when the TV's not on, and for example, I take the dogs out for a walk, and I take them over a bridge that leads down to the Forth Road Bridge that goes back across into Edinburgh, and it's one of the main routes, one of the main arterial routes in Scotland. And at the start of this, you would normally hear the drone of the motorway and see cars. That first morning, I walked over that dead, and the silence was something that you couldn't get there. So it's always there. It's ever present. So as writers and as human beings generally, I don't think you'd be normal if it wasn't having some kind of impact either consciously or subconsciously. And that's going to feed into the work, because you are, if you're writing contemporary fiction, you're writing about the time that you're in, so you're going to reflect that.
Of course.
Yeah, and especially if you're writing like my Ripley series also runs contiguously, so you finish one case, have a couple of weeks off, the next thing pops up, and so the one that's coming out now will actually finish it ends at the sort of Christmas time or the Easter time before COVID starts.
Yeah.
And so there's no mention of it, but then the next one in the series, you just kind of go, maybe it's just a trilogy. I don't know how the fuck we do it with.
Or you write a prequel.
Yeah, exactly. Or she has we filter in a breakdown that's had her in a hospital for a year and a half.
That would be nice.
How do we get away with cutting? It's basically mentally everybody wants to get rid of Excise 2020 from their heads anyway. So maybe the character just has a break.
The more time that goes by, the more it will become a footnote anyway. But every week that goes by for us living in it right now, it becomes a bigger and bigger footnote. And harder and harder to ignore.
And all of those parts of reality, or the economics and the recovery and all of that stuff is just, it was easy enough to sort of avoid mentioning Brexit, but actually now the triumvirate of all of that shit is just terrible.
Well, that's the scary thing is we're only 6 months into 2020.
Yeah.
Really, I know. In fact, can I get one of those beers, Rob? I need to stop being sober now when I think about this. We're only 6 months into 2020, and we're not through this yet.
No.
Quite rightly, these mass protests in America and what happened down in London yesterday. Is that going to cause a second spike?
Quite possibly. I mean,
a rave in Manchester last night. A rave,
yeah.
It's
not been the first either. There've been reports of 3 or 4. There were a whole bunch of people arrested in North Wales at a rave. But I'm holed up in South Wales at the moment, looking after my dad, and we're still not allowed to drive more than 5 miles unless it's an emergency. We're allowed to see one person in a park. You guys are, I know in Scotland it's more restricted but in England everybody's like, yeah, let's go to each other's houses for parties, woo! And you're like, what in God's
there's been lots of seriously. There's been loads of stuff like I've had my first hugs with grandchildren today, or something like that. And
you've got grandchildren.
I don't remember when that was allowed. I don't remember like how this was. Mate, I work fast.
I don't know what it's like in Warrington, but
no, I'm in the bad books in Warrington at the moment, actually, because I caught some kids setting fire to a forest while I was out walking the dog, and I gave them, the old, "What are you doing?" But I recorded it, so the police have been round to take the footage and all sorts, because apparently they're doing it all over the place.
You're a grass.
Oh, good on you.
No, it's caused loads of trouble because I went to my local co-op and they were all sat outside it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And they gave me some real swear words I've never heard before.
Did they?
The next book.
Well,
Yeah, I think I might have to, yeah.
You might just have to dye your hair a different colour again, see.
See, this is the problem. That's why they remember it. You dye your hair in lockdown, they remember that stupid moment. They remember that stupid colour you went. Yeah, don't be a social vigilante with dyed hair. That's the moral of this story.
Or just wear a hat to the co-op.
No, because then they win.
I'm filming you with peace and love.
No, good people. Yeah.
I know. When I saw them, I crawled into the back of my car and took some pictures through the back window because I know the police have been looking for them. So I called my police contact and I said, "I've got them. I've got these pictures. There you go."
My police contact. Also,
He's emailed me today. My mate.
Also love that you write Ben Bracken and you write your Bradley. I mean these guys are tough, right? There's you hiding in the back of your car, giggling away.
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. And they're all about 30.
Yeah.
Let's not forget.
And they're at least 4'5".
No, one of them's had his iron grip of puberty. He's about 6 feet, but he looks awful gangly with it. Like he's got a wingspan. This kid, But he's the gobbiest of the bunch.
Has he got a 2 metre wingspan? Because at least then you could socially.
This kid. No, what with one arm? 2 metre arm.
You never know. It could be like Mr. Tickle.
Yeah, well, he could well be.
Have we got any actual book questions? I mean, I've
got one.
This is like a pub.
It's amazing.
Come on, Chris, bring us back on track, will you, fella?
Yes. So when I was reading the first one, Northern Ireland is mentioned quite a lot. Can I ask why and how you got it? Did you spend time over there?
Yeah. When I was at uni, I met a guy who was from Northern Ireland, and we struck a deal because he couldn't do media law for shit, and I couldn't do a pull-up at the time. So the deal was struck that I'd get him through media law if he trained me, and it turns out he was a sprinter back in Northern Ireland. So when the summers came, I went across and basically did a season in Northern Ireland doing running and stuff and just training with him. So I spent a lot of time in Northern Ireland, and I always wanted to get back to it. And when I came up with Connor and when I came up with that first scene, it was pretty obvious fairly quick that he was going to be dealing with some nasty people. And I wanted, after writing the Doug and Susie series, I wanted a character who was more decisive, who was more physically capable, who could muck around with firearms and, had that kind of background. And looking around, I thought to myself, well, the only police officers who regularly have that training and who regularly carry firearms, police service in Northern Ireland. I can go back to Belfast. And it was just something that I always wanted to do, and I just went from there.
Very cool. That's cool. You got I've never read a book, and I know there are plenty, but I've never read a book where it's been set somewhere that I know the places of. So it really took me home. So yeah, it was very cool to read.
It's lovely that people have been commenting on that about your Erica Piper series, Chris. In that, it's like they'll buy it because it's Manchester and they recognise the places and they recognise the streets. You need to change a couple of restaurants to not cause any kind of libel suits, but other than that, it's nice. It's nice to have an actual physical location to work on. That's believable.
Yeah, especially one that you've not been to, and I cannot remember the last time I was in Belfast properly. So it was like walking through the street
for your signing at Waterstones.
I know, and then it all got cancelled, but I lived through Connor Fraser. And then also a sort of second question that your books are so descriptive, and you really you could feel the places where he goes and the action and stuff, and even things like driving in the car, you feel like you're there with him. So what sort of books did you read, or did they? I mean, obviously what you read has an impact on what you write, but who were the writers that you read when you were growing up?
The fairly typical ones. I started on the Roald Dahl books when I was a real small kid. And then my gran was one of the big influences on me, and she taught me to reading Batman comics sitting on her knee. So that kind of started that. And then growing up, it was, I found Sherlock Holmes, I found Conan Doyle, found Stevenson, and then obviously I found Stephen King entirely too early. That was an interesting one.
Didn't we all?
Mom and Dad got called, and I had to borrow the librarian's copy of Carrie, because I was reading, it was the school library, and they had all the stuff that was boring as hell, and I'd read all these kids' books, and I was bored with them. And I was taking a book out, and just at her desk, just underneath the lip of the table, was Carrie just popping out, and it was that one with the picture of her with, what's the actress's name? Sissy
Spacek.
That's it. With the blood dripping down her face.
Yeah.
Okay. So me, with an interest in 80s horror films and stuff, saw this and kind of craned round. So I checked that book out of the library that day as well and got into a bit of trouble for that.
So by checking that book out, you mean you nicked it?
I nicked
from the
librarian. And I did put my other books I was taking out with it. And I did take it back, but I got in a bit of trouble. So that was
between your copies of Janet and John.
Yeah, Janet, John, and Carrie.
What age are we talking about here, mate?
But that was the first book that when I read it, I could feel what we were going back to at the start, was that propulsive nature of the prose. You could feel that Stephen King was really just battering the words out, trying to get this story down. And that was the first that caught me. So after that, it was Stephen King, and then, it was Ian Banks. Complicity was one of the best books I've ever read. And then it was on Ian Rankin, of course. And then I found the Laidlaw books, and it was just that standard progression. And then Chris Brookmyre, and then later on, one of the books that taught me the most about writing was by a guy called Craig Russell. Don't know if you know the name.
Yeah.
The Ghosts of Altona won the Bloody Scotland Book of the Year award the year after I was nominated. And I got to know Craig because my local Waterstones, I'm not sure whether this was genius or just twisted by them, but they came to me and said, this guy, he was born in Fife. He's just won the Bloody Scotland Book of the Year award. You didn't win the year before. Would you like to interview him? Great, thanks. But I picked up the Book of Altona and said, right, let's see what this boy has that I don't have. And I got about 10 chapters in and thought, yeah, okay, I've been peddling around in the shallow end. It's time to get serious about what I do. So that book really informed my work. But it's like everything. You said, you're influenced by everything you read, and hopefully you're improving with each book.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about this with Kelly last week, where you just kind of go, does your confidence improve? Maybe not, but you make far fewer mistakes than you did. Your confidence of sitting down, starting, and your confidence of handing it over, or your confidence when people reading it, I think everybody always has a slight agitation, but I think your ability to hit the pages quicker with fewer errors and fewer...
Yeah, I think if I ever lost that fear, either before, during, or after it, I think it would be time to kind of look and say, right, there's something really badly wrong here. At the end of the day, what you're doing is an act of insanity. You are trying to create a world in a reader's head using words, and that's basically an act of telepathy. So you're sitting down and trying to do that over the course of 100,000 words, and if that prospect doesn't scare you...
Yeah, I mean, look, it's hard enough to fire up the imagination of people who you love and know very well, and know how to make them tick. But to fire up the imagination of complete strangers by the way you've arranged perfectly freely available words in a certain order is it's a ridiculous thing.
I love the idea freely available. Like we've not had to pay royalty to use that.
No, they're all in the dictionary. You just open that shit up, and there's loads of words. You just pick them all out, you throw them up in the sky, and then they fall down. You go and you just arrange them, don't you? That's one of my Scottish friend Roddy. He says you just lie to people for a living. And you just, how successful you are depends on how well you lie, Yeah.
I don't think we lie. I don't know whether lie, because lying implies
a lot of shit.
We make up stuff, yeah. But at least we're honest that we're making it up. Like, I have a guy on Twitter who keeps coming in saying, "Thank you for your service to our country."
Does he think you're a politician or something?
No, he thinks Ben Bracken's autobiographical. And I haven't. And I've told him I haven't. But it's been going on for years, and now I'm just like, I appreciate that.
Maybe he knows what you're doing in Warrington at the minute.
Yeah. No, I'm retired here, trying to, like John Rambo, I retired to Warrington.
You're just spying on 13-year-olds from the back of your Vauxhall Corsa.
I said to him, initially I was like, I'm not that guy. And he said, I understand. I understand you can't say anything. I get you. No, I'm really serious. I'm not that guy. I understand. Crying out loud, man.
Does he turn up at every signing?
What signing? Right?
Signing? Oh, no, you can't. It's coronavirus.
No, there's no signings, mate. No signings. Like the Everglades boat crash fights. Social distancing, man.
I can't wait to read that. That sounds absolutely incredible.
Well, I had to go through the rigmarole of trying to work out what would happen if a person fell into the fan on the back of one of those airboats. That's the idea.
That's the noise it makes. I tried it.
I had a riot working on that. It was great.
You've got to try it with squirrels first to get the noise right, and then
And the worrying thing is, there will be someone out there who's done that.
Try it with squirrels.
Yeah. No. Don't make it rude now, Sean. Don't make it rude
actually, Rob. I was.
Yeah. A fan belt of squirrels, just squirrels in a tennis ball machine, right out into the back of an airboat.
How's your hangover, Neil?
What hangover? I feel like I'm drunk again.
What the hell have I stumbled into?
I've got a question. Why am I putting my hand up? No one in podcast world can see that, but I've got my hand up. Sometimes I feel like when you're reading long running series about a character who is in a particular pigeonhole, they're stuck in that pigeonhole. But what I think one of the genius things of the Fraser series is what he does in Protection. I think that gives you an endless canvas to give this guy free reign and free roll to do whatever he wants. Yeah. And that makes this because I'm whenever I read a Connor Fraser, I'm like, this is absolutely my jam. This because it's he can do anything. He's not sort of stuck with any sort of real legalities or anything like that.
Yeah.
And I imagine that was a conscious decision.
It kind of was that I wanted to do police procedural, but play with it and do something that gave me that freedom, which is why Malcolm Ford's there, because he's the guy that, although he's a pragmatist and he'll bend the rules to help Connor out and stuff, he's still a cop, so he still has to live in that world. But what I wanted was somebody who could bend the lines and, blur the lines, and who could do whatever he wanted. So that became a kind of, well, how do I do that? How do I get him involved in all this? All right, okay, I'll make him a protection officer. And then it just kind of, as you said, that opened up a whole world, because although Connor's based in Stirling, he could and he will at some point, he could be protecting a client in London. He could, well, if we ever get out of lockdown, he could be in the world. He could technically go anywhere and do anything. And that was one of the appeals of the character. And that setup that he can go anywhere and he can do more or less anything that I can think of.
But that will stop. I mean, your series then can never get stagnant because you can do, like you say, you can take him wherever you want to take him.
Well, hopefully not. I mean, I've just signed for another 2, so I've got to get 5 books without going stagnant anyway. But yeah, I mean, that was the thing, that I didn't want it to be this treadmill of it's another case and we go through this and they have the major incident room and they da-da-da-da-da. At least with this, for example, No Place to Die, you know, you can investigate a personal development weekend in a way that the police never would. And if I put you off barbecue with that, then I apologise.
You know, listeners, you have to read that scene, by the way. You have to read that scene. Well, on the personal development stuff, what research did...
I did the usual... When I had the idea and I figured out about the finance return something else, and I don't even know where that idea came from, but the personal development thing, you can't really go 5 minutes on the internet without hitting some guru who's going to change your life in 10 days.
I love a guru.
You can go anywhere from Paul McKenna to Tony Robbins. And I was just looking at these guys, and once I started reading up on them, it just fascinated me about these guys who... They sit there and they promise you the world and you're going to take control of your destiny. And I thought, there's something in this that I just want to investigate. So I did read up a lot on, you know, the self-improvement psychologists and all this type of stuff. And then I just went from there and thought, right, if there was an event, where would it be? Right, we could put that in Stirling. Okay, he's going to need protection. And it just kind of organically went from there. And that barbecue scene was all the fault of my next-door neighbour.
What did your next-door neighbour do?
My next door, he's a lovely guy. He reads all the books. Once, you know, those closest to me have read them. Alistair gets a red folder with a version of the book in, and if it passes him, I'm happy. He spent a lot of time in South Africa, so he's the king of barbecue. So he's got a big barbecue hut, and we're sitting there one night and just having a couple of drinks and talking away, and he's got this big kind of dome fire in the centre of. It's like a big table with the fire pit in the centre of it. And there's got this canopy that comes down and on top of it. And me being me, I looked at it and I thought, what if somebody fell into that? I thought if there was a head in that.
It's always the head.
and it just kind of went from there. So that kind of clicked in the back of my head. And when I was writing the book, I needed something dramatic to happen with this guy for obvious reasons. So I thought, fire, bonfire. Okay, yeah, I can make that work. And it just kind of went from there.
Can I? Fiona Cummins sent in a question saying, first of all, what's your favourite whiskey, and do you save a particular brand for when you finish writing a book, or do you have a ritual when you finish writing a book?
The usual words are "Thank Christ." You kind of slump back with the chair and go, "I've done it." I wish I could say I had a ritual for finishing a book. I really don't. I'll finish it, I'll print it out, I'll give it to people to read. Whiskey-wise, for special occasions, it's a Glenfiddich 15-year-old, because when I got married, that's the whiskey I was drinking on my wedding day. Generally, day-to-day, I've fallen into this habit. You know the author Helen Fields?
Yeah.
Lovely, lovely woman. But whenever we do an event, we have to do it with a side order of Jameson's whiskey. I think that's more for her benefit to take the edge off having to work with me. But no, that's the kind of go-to stuff. But I don't really. If it's whiskey and if it ends with an EY or a Y, I'll drink it. I'm Scottish. What can I say? I have cultural stereotypes to keep up. But no, as for rituals, I wish I could say I had one because the first one had to get written so quickly, because Falling Fast, I kind of boxed myself into a real corner with that one. I did what you should never do. I had the idea, and I was so desperate to get published and dedicate the book to my gran that I thought, right, I'm going to do this. And I got myself so wound up, I wrote the first 10 chapters and sent it off. And then I forgot about it, went back to working at the Scotsman and whatever, and I got an email back from Bob McDevitt, who worked from Hachette at the time, saying, I really like this. Could I see the rest of it, please? To which I said, yes, Bob, no problem. Could you give me a week just to polish it off and just make sure that it's fine?
Just
So
to
I went
finish it off.
2 weeks. So I wrote the first draft of Falling Fast in about 3 weeks.
Wow.
So I didn't have time to kind of sit down and go, I have created. It was a case of, shit, I've got to get this done. So I got it done, and then I went on and did the next one. And I've never really had a kind of ritualized thing of the book is finished. I've never done the Misery style, have a cigarette and a bottle of champagne.
I've just got this image of you like one of those cat memes, just bashing the keyboard. No idea what's going on.
I was subbing the Scotsman. I was sub-editing the Scotsman at the time. So what I did was I arranged to have 2 weeks of day shifts, which started at 6 o'clock in the morning and finished at 3:15 in the afternoon. So you had to basically edit 3 editions of the newspaper, as it was back then, live. And then I'd go home, and we were just moving into a flat down in Leith at the time. So I'd sit in this chair with the laptop perched on my knees and batter away.
Genius.
And so in 3 weeks, you concocted a book that was nominated for what is now the McElvany Prize.
I concocted the draft of a book that became Falling Fast. Let's put it that way. But it was enough to get...
Yeah. But, like, I mean, that is astonishing. And, that, like, because one of the things that I always really motivated by is inspiring writers to follow through with it. You know, because there's so many great writers out there, and they've got to a point with their books that then just get it done. Get it done. However you get it done, you've done it. You can always make it better. You can always make it better, but you can't sort something out that ain't there.
No, that's it. You can edit 500 words of crap. You can't edit 500 words that aren't there.
You can't at all. You can't at all. And there's all sorts of crude phrases that I try not to use in schools about polishing turds and rolling them in glitter and all sorts.
Thousands and making it look like a cupcake, all of that stuff.
Exactly. Which you can do and is all relevant and is all accurate. But that's amazing that you did that in 3 weeks.
It wasn't. I mean, don't get me wrong. The draft that draft that came out in 3 weeks is not the book that was finished. It went through a lot of. Have you thought about this? Have you done that? Have you done that? And it was constant. It was a constant process of editing and re-editing and rethinking it. But yeah, the first draft I got out 80,000 words in about 3.5 weeks. Because I did exactly what I shouldn't do, and I boxed myself in a corner because I got so desperate to fulfill that promise. I just put myself in a corner and did it.
God, totally different speed. But what's next for you?
Next will be the next Connor Fraser, which is called The Hunt, which is a book that I have been I have to write, because last year I was doing an event for Book Week Scotland in this library in a wee village, and there's this textbook version of your granny sitting at the front, the white hair, the cardigan, the wee prim glasses and everything. And she's sitting there, she's taking everything in, and at the end she says, "And when are you going to write the story about Polly, the pet thug?" Who's a lot of fun to write. And I said, right, I'll get right to that. She said, is that your next book, The Point of No Return, which is coming out in September? I said, no, sorry, that's not this book. She said, well, could you hurry up and write that one next, son? Because I'd really like to know what happens next, and I might not be around for too much longer.
Oh,
no. Jesus Christ.
God, if you thought the pressure of a publisher wanting a full...
What I didn't realise was subconsciously the boys in the basement were working on that, because The Hunt, the next book, is all about Polly, Jen, Connor, and it digs right into that. But I didn't realise that when I was writing them. But yeah, this wee old lady comes up to me and says, could you hurry up and write that?
Oh, my word.
Read it.
There's deadlines, and then there's a GOAP's mortality.
Isn't that actually a literal deadline? I think I just said that out loud. I'm ever so sorry. I'm sorry.
I'm going to write that book with a Grim Reaper over my shoulder.
Yeah.
Come on, boys. Come on.
But then what horrible, what if you finish it and just as she reads the last page?
As long as she reads the last page, I'm happy.
Okay, fair enough. I'd be slightly happier if she just knocks the review out on Amazon before you get there, but Jesus, the cynicism coming out today.
So yeah, that's what's next for me, is the next Connor. Actually, no. The next thing is online crime. which is the festival which was meant to be down in Lyme in Dorset that Paddy McGrain's putting together. So I'm doing online stuff for that. We're doing a Noir at the Bar, as you will know, Rob.
Yeah.
And we're doing a kind of host of events to just try and... Because it was meant to be launched this year. So to try and keep the festival's name going, we're going to do a virtual festival, which a lot of folk are doing. And then after that, we'll just see what happens.
Wicked, man, wicked. I feel like I keep dominating by asking questions, but you know, like you get that in that right. We've got Neil Broadfoot here. I've got so many questions for him. I feel like I'm going to burst. But where would you write in if it weren't crime? Like, what other genres would you consider writing in? Is there any itch you need to scratch in another genre?
There's actually a debt I need to repay. My oldest friend, who was the first guy to ever read a proper story that I'd done, and turned around and said, "You've got something there, you can write." There's a guy called Joe, and Joe did the covers for my first series of books. Because when we were growing up, watching too many horror films and stuff, Joe's a really talented graphic designer. So we made this kind of childhood pact of, I'll write the books, you do the covers. And it came to pass. That's exactly what happened. But I used to tell stories, and I'd know that I'd done it right, and I'd try and scare Joe's a big guy, he's like 6'4", built like a tank. And he'd always used to say, right, you can't tell me a story that will scare me. So I took this as a challenge. So I'd come up with these horror stories and ideas. And I knew it had worked one night when he ran home from my house, zigzagging between lampposts because he didn't want to go in the dark. I knew I'd got him at that point. But I always said to Joe I'd write a proper horror story, a proper horror novel. So I've got this idea ticking over in the back of my head. So I'll do that at some point. That'll be where I go next.
I mean, what a perfect fit that is. A Neil Broadfoot horror book.
Some might say that my life's a horror story, so you know.
Let's go non-fiction. That'll be a nice departure.
What are you reading at the minute, Neil?
Well, I've just finished Rob's book, so I'm kind of between books at the moment. I'm kind of stuck as to what to pick up next. I've actually found that I'm way behind in the Michael Connelly books for some reason. I've read a couple of the Bosches, but I've read The Poet, as every kind of fan of crime has, I suppose. But I've kind of got a massive back catalogue that I've stumbled over, so I'll probably go back and read them. But you know, every day, that's one of the other nice things about being a writer is people start sending you books, so you never know that you may get a proof through the door that will grab your attention. But as I say, I'm kind of between books at the moment because I just finished Rob's the other day.
Yeah, that's quite a hard one to follow, isn't it, Rob?
I'll figure something out.
do what Rob does and go to some childhood Star Wars fanfic.
Oh, seriously, did you hear this? Like, I was so traumatised after Chris Whitaker's We Begin at the End that I had to go back to some Star Wars fiction afterwards. Like, I needed to go total palate cleanse.
The one book that's done that to me is, again, talking about Craig Russell. He wrote a book that never really got, I think because the publishers didn't quite understand what it was. It wasn't a crime novel. It was like a sci-fi book. But it was a thriller. And it's called, as I say, The Third Testament. But there's a scene in it, and it's only like 5 pages long. And it's about a woman who has dementia. And it starts with her, she notices that a metal-framed photograph is just off-centre. So she changes it. She realigns it on the table, and she goes away and does whatever, and she comes back, and at the end of it, she sees that the picture frame is misaligned, and she realigns it again. And in those 5 pages, Craig gives you dementia. You actually experience what it's like to have dementia. And I read that, and I've read, The Exorcist, the worst Stephen King can offer. You know what I can write viscerally. And I read that and went, okay, that's enough for me for today.
Really? What's it called?
Third Testament. It's also called Biblical. Have I got it here? No, it's downstairs. But it is, honestly, it's one of the most accomplished pieces of writing, the most immersive pieces of writing I've ever had. And it's disturbing. And that's the only book that I've ever gone, oof. No, that's enough of that. But it gives, if you read those 5 pages, you will have dementia for those 5 pages.
Wow.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
What are you reading, Rob?
Well, I'm also just between books. So I'm about to start this evening The Last Wife by Karen Hamilton.
Well, I just finished it. I'm between books, so I'm about to start.
Oh, are you? Wow.
I'm
What
about
weird
to
place
start The Lies You Told by Harriet Tice.
Ah, cool.
Well, then
Yeah.
next week we can discuss Karen.
Yes, because Karen's on next week, isn't she?
Mm.
Excellent. What about you, Chris?
I started Will Carver's Hinton Hollow Death Trip.
Oh,
Yes,
how we
because you
doing?
got your new Kindle.
Yeah, I got my new Kindle, yeah.
Oh, nice. And how is Hinton Hollow Death Trip?
It's exactly what you'd expect and more. Like, it's just not all over the show, but so many things happen that it's just like, you don't know where you are. It is absolutely incredible so far.
Brilliant.
Oh, that's wicked. Huh? Can I
Very
ask,
good.
as a slightly new feature to the podcast, what books are you excited about coming up? Neil? Is there anything that you've seen announced that you like bursting to get your hands on?
Well, I've got it. Doug Johnson's new one. The second.
Oh, I saw the proof going out
wow.
this week. Yeah.
Madeline. And actually, that might be my next read. I'll put that in the kind of TBR pile. I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into that one. A lesser-known author who you might know the name of, a guy called Derek Farrell.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
We loved Derek Farrell.
Danny
Oh,
Birdseed.
yeah.
The Funny Boys series.
I've been working on a couple of things with him, and he's done a kind of standalone, which was great, and he did a short story that was dark as hell. And he did the Noir at the Bar anthology for the NHS check.
Yeah.
Available on Amazon now, by the way, people. So there was that, but he's starting work on another Danny book, and given where we are in the world at the moment, I can't wait to spend a bit of time with Danny and Kaz and the online.
Yeah.
Brilliant, because I think that's just what we need at the moment. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Damn right.
He's definitely our speed, Derek. Do you think he'd come on here?
Oh,
Of course
God.
he would.
He's on my list of people that I really want to come on.
Here we go. All of us sitting here now, we can just say, Derek, will you come on our podcast? And then we'll tag him
Derek.
in this and then
Tag him in.
and see what happens. If he says no, he's good to us.
I'm going to stick my neck out here. He's not going to say no. He'll come on. And he'll be great because he's just a lovely guy.
He is, isn't he? He is, yeah.
Here, wait, you see this for a proof. Right?
Eight Detectives.
Oh,
I think the lovely Anne Case sent that to you.
whoa! What is that?
That's the cover.
Pretty cool, isn't it?
Ooh, like that.
The cover has like a little thing that pops out.
Case.
A little insert, yeah, you just put it in.
Oh, fit.
Yeah, that's right.
Lovely.
I've been
Now,
trying
you
to
don't
my
get
hands
that
on
with
it for a while.
dinosaur erotica.
No, it's all pop up, isn't it?
It's all pop-up. That's revolting.
Oh, come on.
I do
funny.
not sanction this. I do
At
not.
least that was funny. It wasn't that.
Oh, no, it was very funny. Unsanctioned.
Funny.
Are you ready for a 1-star superstar?
Yeah.
1 star. This is one that I find it's the same book. It doesn't give anything away, but 1 star. I probably would like it, but it didn't get onto my iPad. Any advice welcome. So that's the same review as this one. So 1 star because she couldn't figure out how to sort her
To
technology.
get it on her iPad.
Yeah. And then this is the one that might give you a clue. Number 1, I'm astounded by the hype and favourable reviews of this book. I find it poorly written and the jumping around of POVs annoying. In parts, the plot is plain ridiculous. The basic premise could have been developed into a satisfying read, but sadly the author fails miserably on delivery. Memo to self, ignore the hype in future. I don't think I'll be bothering with the film, little clue. Frankly, I begrudge the lost hours spent reading this book. That review's from 2015.
Oh, so the book must have come out similar time-ish?
I think the film came out like 3 or 4 years ago.
Is it one of the Reacher books?
No.
No, shifting point of view.
Girl on the Train?
Nope, but there's a word in there that is in the title.
Gone Girl.
Gone Girl.
Gone Girl. You know, one of the most brilliantly written books I've ever read in my life.
Is it? I've not read it. I've seen the film.
I loved it to pieces.
Did you? I didn't. I didn't get on the film.
Oh, did you like the book? Oh no! See, this is what I love about.
I haven't seen the film as a result. But
about the conversation, but like, yeah. Oh no, the film is good. Although I've got a close mate who stuck through the film right until the scene at the end with the wine bottle. And she, and on the front row, a granny, possibly the same granny, Neil, that, you know, she went like, "That's enough for me," and left.
I've seen it all now.
She stuck through everything until the wine bottle bit.
Neil, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing with us, and belated happy birthday for yesterday. But thanks for giving us the benefit of your time.
Thanks for having me.
It's been delightful. And gentlemen, thank you both.
Oh, it's always mega, mate.
Yeah,
The shits and giggles.
Honestly, like, this was one of the... You know, sometimes you worry about the chemistry when you get on one of the podcasts. You'll have to take this out, Sean. But there was no concern.
We'll see about that.
Yeah,
Rob has properly been shitting himself about whether you'd be any good or not, Neil. So, I mean...
To be honest, that's not the first time I've heard that phrase.
He hasn't. He's been as steady as a fish all week about it.
No. But it's just been great to hang out, and this is like why we call this pod therapy at times. This has been like the hour of the week for me. It's been amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Idiots.